get it.
Yo, what's up, everybody? This is Devious. You are watching and listening to Outspoken. Right now, Kid Boogie's handling some daddy duties. He'll be joining us a little later. And yeah, we have a very special guest from PLAYBOYZ Incorporated, Bryce, Playboy Stix. How you doing, brother?
What's up, Devious? How you doing, man?
Chilling.
I'm I'm good. It's the weather's clear now, so smoke is gone. So I gotta be thankful for that.
Man, how are you dealing with all that, man? Because I know we had couple months, I guess like 4 or 5 months ago, we were in the same situation out here in LA, right?
hmm
Like, and it was pretty scary. And I've never been in that type of situation with the fires like that. So, how's everything going for you and your family and everything?
Well, fortunately, we're in the more heavily populated cities, so we're not too close to all that. I do have some family members that had to like evacuate a couple of towns and whatnot, but I think in general everybody's been pretty safe. Luckily, mostly that we've just felt the smoke, just having to stay inside because of the air quality and all that.
Yo, we got Kid
There
Boogie.
he is. Came with,
What up?
came fitted with the brim and everything.
Always.
What's going on, y'all? What's going on?
Chilling. Yeah, so Bryce is just breaking down kind of how it's going out there with the fires and stuff in the bay and stuff. And yeah,
Oh,
man,
word?
like the smoke, bro. The smoke is bad. Like, even if you're not close to the actual fires, like if you're close enough for that smoke, man, you really start realizing it. Like the third, fourth day when you still smell the
hmm
burning and all that, you're just kind of like, whoa, like this isn't good. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
man, and
crazy.
so, let's send our prayers out there for everyone who has to deal with these fires. Those that don't know, Bryce is up north, California, and I guess yeah, we'll start with that. Like, where are you originally from? Where were you born and raised?
So I was born and raised in Santa Clara, California, which is in the South Bay area. It's right next to San Jose. Um, and so, yeah, born and raised there. I went to college in Arizona, and then I moved back to the Bay, and now I'm out in the East Bay in Alameda, which is right next to Oakland.
Okay, dope. And like, what was your journey like? What kind of like neighborhood would you say you grew up in? Like, was there a bunch of people getting down where you grew up, or was it like, how was that?
No, it's pretty, middle of the road, suburban. Not a lot of big things happen. It's pretty quiet there. Um, I saw a little bit at my high school, some people dancing and stuff. And I was kind of trying to break dance at a little bit, like b-boy stuff. But I didn't really get that much into that. And so it wasn't until I actually went to Tommy Boy's class when I was a senior in high school, and that was like when I really first started seeing the real deal stuff.
And before that, before you even got to Tommy Boy's class, what were you involved with in school? Like, what type of student or teenager were you?
I was a good kid. I had good grades and all that. My parents raised me well. Um, yeah, pretty chill lifestyle all around. Nothing too big or crazy going on in my life. So I think it's helped me like stay grounded as a person and stuff like that,
Mhm.
and have a solid foundation in character and stuff like that for sure.
So like, the reason I asked that too, just because like usually when you have that calmer lifestyle, you have a lot more structure in your life. Things are set up. Like, all right, go to school, do this. Like, what led you to want to even take a class from Tommy Boy, or like, how did you know who he was, or what was that situation like? Because you were still in high school.
Yeah, I was always into music and dance. So like my dad was into blues. So I was always like from a young age really listening to a lot of music. And then I really got into hip hop when I was probably like 10, 9 or 10 or whatever.
Was this the '90s?
And yeah, this was the mid late 90s. And so that was like my first love with like that music and kind of just dancing to it. Nothing like specific, no specific moves or whatever, but um, just loving that culture. And then so it kind of led me to this, which I thought was, kind of part of it, which I guess popping's like kind of been adopted into hip hop and all that.
Yeah, that's true, especially around that era too. And so yeah, like, was there like flyers around your school or something for Tommy Boy's class, or like you had a friend? Because it's Tommy Boy, you're just like,
I know.
Like, yeah, like, some people's first experience learning is like, yeah, this dude Joe, who like taught hip hop at the local studio, who's the person who taught me my first wave. You're like, your first class in high school is from Tommy Boy, like a legend.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a trip.
I don't know how he is now. Back then, he wasn't the friendliest dude alive.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that.
Not in the dance scene for sure. If you're a fellow dancer, he's gonna try to take you out for sure.
Yeah.
I know you guys, especially with MGF, is always a thing. Ionic, especially. But it was really kind of crazy to think about, because he only was teaching at this dance studio for the 6 months that I went there.
Oh,
and
wow.
My girlfriend at the time in high school was just teaching. She was teaching at the studio and knew that I liked dancing, and was just like, there's this guy, he's going to start teaching here. He's supposed to be really good. And I didn't even really know what popping was. I know I had seen moves that were, in the umbrella or whatever, but I never knew what to call it or whatever. So when I started, I just went to that class to check it out, basically. And the first day I was hooked.
Do you remember what the first movie taught you?
I don't know about the first move, but I remember he taught a few things. Like, it was like how to do a basic arm wave with like ticking, and then also the wave, basic tuts, basic robot. So he showed a lot of different things. And so it was really, like, it really got me, because there was a lot of creativity, a lot of variety. And I'm also like, I took martial arts as a kid too. And I think I had this like, just love for like form and structure. So like this particular dance had a lot of that too, like shapes and geometry and all that.
No, yeah. That's definitely. And like, at that point, would you say you knew that you wanted to be a dancer, like after that class, or was it like, when did that spark happen? Like, when you're just like, okay, you know what, this is something I want to pursue more than just your typical hobby.
Yeah, pretty much after that, because I always liked dancing, but now I was like, oh, I can create with it, and I can like do something more specific and train something. Like, I always just enjoyed and did whatever I could, but now it was like, I saw a whole new level of possibilities.
The magic.
Creatively.
That's right, the magic. We all get that moment where we figure out, man, this is like, I don't know, it's really, for me, the dance that allows you to use your creativity the most, right? Like, it really, really tap into that. All right, so you learn from Tommy Boy, because this is the '90s, so Playboys weren't really back yet. PLAYBOYZ INC wasn't really, you could say, re-sparked. So who did you start kicking it with, or like, did you have a crew? Actually, you know what? What was your first dance? When did you get your first dance name? Or what was your first dance name? Was it always Playboy Stix?
I just went by my first name for the longest time, and then when I got in the crew in 2010, Money B kind of just came up with that name at one of our practice sessions. And I wasn't totally sold on it at first, but then I was like, oh, okay, it's cool, it's not bad. And then when you start entering competitions, you got to pick something. And so I was like, boom, and then it just stuck with me. Stix stuck.
I thought you had.
Why Stix though? Is it because you're skinny?
Pretty much. I mean, it was
Oh.
Yeah, my look and kind of my
because you stuck the moves.
Yeah, I wasn't a big hitter,
Yeah.
So like, and I'm still not, but it's more like, I guess, that like how I dance and also how I look. Yeah.
Yeah, that's tight. I like that.
And I feel like you had a name before Playboy Stix.
I had a
Boogaloo Bryce or something.
I just went by my name, and then when I was editing those songs, it was Bryce Loops.
Yeah.
There you go. I knew there was. I felt like I knew of a name that you had before that. That Bryce Loops was just what you did because were you on Fruity Loops, the editing program, or okay?
Yep. Well, I edited it in a cool editor, Adobe Audition.
Mm.
But it was just because I remember listening during practice to DJ Doc made some edits.
Mm.
If you remember
Yeah.
those things, and
Yeah.
and I noticed what he did. I was just like, oh, it just looped the.
Hey, here's a question I want to ask you, because you were in the music and like editing beats and stuff from back then.
Mhm.
Who do you say started off this like loops genre thing? Like I want to let's just call it popping music, because that's what people call it now.
Mhm.
Who do you say, was it Doc or was it Slick Dog? Because you know Slick Dog's out, like he says that he started it, which I kind of want to say he did, but then I kind of want to say Doc did, because I remember Doc's tapes, like mixtapes, and they were just loops. They were for poppers, you know.
Yeah.
Who do you think?
You know, I can't remember who came, who was first or whatever, but I remember it was a little bit different, right? Because you had the loops that Doc was doing in the mixtapes, which was really dope. They were good for practicing.
Yeah.
But then Slick was like making the beat, right?
No, but in the beginning, oh yeah, he was a producer, but in the beginning, I kind of want to say he was giving us loops too.
Oh, okay.
You know, I kind of want to say it wasn't until he got with the Boogaloos, and then that's when he started making music for the Boogaloos, and that's when we started getting the music. Because I don't know if you know, even now he doesn't release any of his shit. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So that's why I asked, because I kind of want to agree with him about him like starting off this whole popping genre, but then I also kind of want to give it to Doc, because he did a lot of mixtapes that we were practicing to back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's
And
probably
yours
a combination,
too, like your mixtapes too. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, I was just going off what he did. I was like, I was more looking at Doc in that sense. It was like, because I wasn't making beats. I didn't have all the right. I don't know. I didn't have the good quality like samples and all that stuff. So I was just like, hey, I could just take this thing and loop it and just because some of those songs were really dope, but they might have had like
whack ass rappers over it.
Like, hey man, it's like
I know. I remember.
It kind of ruins it,
Yeah.
That's fresh. But see, like even that with the creation of something, like when something's created, it's like usually a mixture of things that make the creation, right? So like when people, I think, take credit for like solely creating, and we'll get into this even a little bit later, but when people take credit for solely creating a dance or solely creating a genre of music, it's like you just said, the first person, Bryce, you went to is that guy who did the Doc, right? And that was like who you were, I guess, most influenced by. And then you did some, and then that probably influenced somebody. But people were you also heard Slick's music. So like, I feel like it's always a coalition of people who create something, right? Like, how do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, here's my thing with the whole genre of popping, right? Because me as a musician and like making beats and stuff, like I disagree with the whole genre of like popping music.
Yeah.
Because what did this dance start with? Funk music, right?
Yeah.
So why are you trying to change the name of funk? Like it's either funk, G-funk, or modern funk. There's no, like, for me, there's no such thing as poppy music. If you want to call poppy music, what people actually call poppy music, I just call loops. Like, it's just a freaking, like, they make a dope 8/16 bar and then they just loop it. There's no song structure to it. You know what I mean?
Real.
So for me, like, I disagree, but like, okay, that's your thing. Like, that's what you want to claim. Go ahead. But I disagree with it,
No, and I feel similar because like poppy music, I thought that's what the dance was created to, was the music, right? And
Yeah,
even like if you look at songs like West Coast pop lock, I would assume that those people made that song for pop lockers, right? Or for poppers.
exactly.
They would
So
say like
that's the first poppin' song.
you could, like, you know, I don't know, like I don't know. What do you think, Bryce? What do you think?
No, I think I'm pretty much on the same page. I mean, I kind of get the idea of what they're saying with pop music, because they're saying like, oh, I'm making music specifically for poppers. So usually it's like, instrumental for the most part, and it's real heavy on the claps and the snares, so that it can hit hard to it, right? But it's still just basically like what Alan's saying, Kid Boogie's saying, is this is G funk or modern funk or
Yeah,
whatever, or just old funk that's like, with newer sounds maybe, or whatever.
Yeah,
yeah, no, that's yeah. So yeah, poppy music. I don't. Yeah, same. I don't really. Because even then, like I don't get down to poppy music. When the songs that I do get down to, like to me, it's like it fits in those categories, right? Like, um,
yeah.
yeah, man. Like, so back to even like with your name getting Playboy Stix, that's like 2010. So how many? But before you actually got a name, how many years were you already? Because in the 90s, you learned from Tommy Boy.
Well, no, I learned it in 2002 is when I started learning from Tommy.
Okay,
So
2002.
that was my start. So,
So 8 years later,
but
you got your name.
yeah, pretty much. I wasn't doing a lot. So, I went to college like right after I learned from him, and then when I came back, I was just like learning on my own there, just watching some videos. Like YouTube wasn't that big, so it was like all these other, uh, style to oof, the
Yeah. Yep.
the French website, and SoulSeek, and all these ways to get videos at the time. Um, so then when I came back, that's when I started connecting with Boogaloo Pimp, actually,
Boogaloo Pimp.
and that's how I ended up meeting
You
Kid
came
Boogie and
back
all
what
those
year?
guys.
What year did you
Actually, I
come
met them before that. Sorry, I met in 2003 is when I was like coming back from college during breaks and stuff,
Yeah.
and I took a class from Bionic at that same studio. And
What's the
but I
studio
remember
name?
even what's that?
What's the studio's name?
Oh
Remember?
shoot,
Just because they had Tommy Boy and Bionic there, then
I know,
damn,
right?
damn, this studio they gave us some hitters.
Yeah, I forget now.
Oh,
Oh man, I forget the name of it. But actually, I met those guys like even when I was learning from Tommy. I think they would come and practice after our class.
dope.
But it was Pimp, it was Nicodemus, Bionic, and Kazoo,
Original
right?
MDF.
Yep. And I
Yeah.
remember I remember the day Nikolai came to the class or to that session and was like, "Oh, I thought of the name Machine Gun Funk." And I was like, and I thought he was talking about like his own name or something and
Yeah,
whatever. But then later I saw that it became their crew and everything. So that was kind of cool.
that's really fresh. So then, yeah,
Um,
2000. So then, 2010. Well, when did you meet the Playboys? Like, cause then Tommy Boy, was he still like around consistently, or did he disappear, or like?
I would see him here and there, but he was also like he went to LA for a little bit, a few years, and was doing stuff with like touring with Black Eyed Peas and
Yeah, with the
um,
experiments.
yeah. So um, what happened between there was so then I met the first like Playboys kind of connection. After that was through Dizzy, and that was in 2008 because he saw me at a couple of events.
Hmm.
And then this one day I was at the 7-Eleven by my house, and I was just getting back into my car, and all of a sudden this dude starts dancing in front of my car.
Oh,
And I'm
hella
like, what
hype.
the yeah, oh hell, I'm like, what the and then I was like, oh, that's that dude from the battle. And I remember seeing him at the battle and thinking, damn, this guy's dope. Like he's doing kind of like what Tommy was doing, but had his own flavor and just yeah. So then we connected there, and then I started telling him to come to Boogaloo Pimps. We would session with like Far Side sometimes and some other people. So that's how we started. Me and Dizzy connected.
Oh, word. And
Yeah.
he wasn't even around like that either, huh? Not yet.
Well, he came in 2010 is when I met him.
Word.
But Dizzy had wanted to bring me in at that time, like since we had already been practicing.
For so long, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
just to rewind a little bit, it like how were those sessions with all, like, you could say, the original MGF and everything at that studio? Because you would stay right to session with them.
Um, in the old days, I didn't stay that long. I didn't really know him that well, and like I would
Yeah.
kind of just watch him a little bit. Um, but it wasn't until like 2007, 8 that I started really sessioning with those guys. And that's when I met like sometimes the LA guys like Kid Boogie and Jay Smooth would come up, and then they would be practicing for events. I remember they were training for the How the West Was Won and all that stuff. So that's when I was kind of connecting with those guys.
And I think it's so fresh to like these stories because, um, especially here in the U.S., how many hours you guys would travel just to get to practice sessions. You know, like Arizona to the Bay is not close. You know, L.A. to anywhere in San Jose, San Francisco, that's 5-6 hours at least. You know, um, and yeah, man, driving all those hours to session and stuff. I think that's also what helped elevate that era of poppers here and stuff. That's super dope. So you you're already training for like 2 years with Dizzy, and then you got put down in 2010 with Playboys, or um, you got
Yeah,
put down in
yeah,
2010, and then you got your name Playboy Stix, and that was Money B with the nicknames, man. Money B, Money B. That's super
yep.
dope.
He's
So
he's
already,
got a ton of names.
yeah, I know, right? He comes up with names for everybody.
Yep.
That's super dope. And like, when would you say like your passion for like knowledge of the culture really took over? Like, instead of you just being someone who just pops, just because you love to pop, when did you really like start having this like love for finding out what the culture is really about, or like the history of it?
Yeah. It was something I was always into a little bit, but it wasn't until I started seeing like I would see Pop Tart and Harry Berry and A1 a little bit, and then like seeing that there was this other kind of flavor to the dance, and then Dizzy would show me too what he had learned from Harry, and then then I started hearing what they were saying and how long they've been dancing and all that stuff. I was like, wow, like how come nobody knows about this? Like, and it's all connected. Like it's not some totally separate thing, right? So I just was really intrigued by it. And then when the more and more I started seeing them come out, the more I was like, whoa. And I started seeing some overlaps in movements and just hearing their stories. And then all of a sudden, like probably in 2000, like 12-ish, 13, like that's when it was more big, like in the like what's poppin' Facebook group. There was more of the debates happening,
Yeah,
and and I was just like, I just wanted to learn about it. Like people were arguing about this and that, and I was like, I'm gonna try to figure this out.
yeah, yeah. And you're lucky in the sense, like, just like we are, living next to so many legends and having them around you, right? Because at this point, 2013, you're already back in the Bay, right?
Yeah, yeah,
You're
for
already
sure.
back in the Bay and stuff like that. So, um, yeah. So like, for you, who would you say is like the oldest living first generation popper or book? I don't know. That's the thing. Like, okay, so for you, a historian of this, like, would you say Boogaloo and popping are is like the same thing, like in terms of like uh what it is?
Yeah, basically, it's the popping is like the evolved version, and
Okay.
that's not necessarily saying it's better or worse. It's just an evolved. It's what it became in the late '70s.
Hmm.
But before that, you had already had 10, a little bit more than 10 years of boogalooing that was going on, and even strutting and roboting, right? So, um, but when you look at the foundational movements and the whole idea and attitude behind it all, it's clear to see the links, and then you also know like who was learning from who and who was seeing who and talking to who and whatnot. So to me, I think of it as the same dance. It was just like the late 70s version of the dance was popping, right?
Okay.
So the oldest guy of Boogaloo, the oldest guys, are Pirate and the Easy Walkers, and they were, they started in the, I guess, late 65, but it's not anything close to what we would call popping.
Okay.
That's the thing. It's like, it's more smooth, like they had a dance move they called the D'Italian, which was like the first unique Boogaloo, Oakland Boogaloo move that was like a foundation that people built on.
And these guys are
So
from
like,
Oakland that you're speaking of, right?
yes, yeah, East Oakland, Sobrani Park area to be specific. And it was, again, like what I like to say is we're talking about when things are first starting out. This was like a move, that they were known for, and just kind of their whole flavor, and they were battling people and stuff. But that move was like the footwork foundation that would later lead to things like how the Fillmore's like the side to side, and like that's the theory that we have, is like that was like kind of the start of it. But there's a lot of stuff in between.
No, I know for sure. We're gonna try our best to get into it. So when I see the Oakland Boogaloo, right, I feel like I see strutting steps within there, right?
And Fillmore, a lot of Fillmore.
Yeah, a lot of Fillmore. But I always,
Yeah.
how come people refer to them as different things? Like the OGs, I would see like, it's like, no, I strut, and then there's people like, no, I Boogaloo. But
Yeah.
obviously you're gonna, like, for me, what I see is like people who say that they Boogaloo, there's a lot more rolls and like, poses, and people who strut, I see a lot more stepping and high energy. But like you said right now, it's like almost they all fall under the same thing, but I do see huge differences. But like, how are they the same thing?
Yeah, there's similarities and differences, and really when you get down to it, it's what era they were in and what area they were in. If you're from San Francisco, it's pretty rare that you're gonna from that era, I should say, like in the late 70s or the mid 70s through the late 70s, you're not gonna call your dance Boogaloo. Most likely you're not gonna call it popping, because that was their term that was popular there. But when you see the movements, you see the connections, right? It's not like it's different, but it's not like completely different dance. It's not like, so that's why you'll see people like, say, Kearney does a side to side thing where he's swinging his arms,
yeah,
and stepping side to side, but he doesn't call that the Fillmore. But the reason they're connected is when you start talking to these guys, there was a few guys in particular that brought that style, to that East Oakland style, to the Fillmore district area, and they took onto it, and then they started building and creating their own flavor and adding more things and whatever, and then they started calling it the Fillmore, because they're all just kids, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
You're not like trying to preserve traditional history as a kid.
Yeah, they're just
fun.
doing it.
They're just like, whatever, kids change the names of dances all the time, and
Yeah,
and whatever. So, and they're very proud of it. They're like, no, this is the way we do it. We don't want to be like them, and right? So that's what was happening. But it's hard to understand unless you like really talk to them all, and like you start to see these subtle differences, and you also like learn who these people are that brought it over. And you're like, oh, this wasn't just something they just both came up with. Like, these guys actually, came over there.
Yeah. No, see, like, that's interesting because, like you said, like a lot of what happens is a lot of people tend to learn something and then they kind of change the name a little bit of it, especially if they add their own little flavor to it. So for me, like, because there's always the controversy, but like who invented Boogaloo, who invented popping, and all that type of stuff. But it's like, when do we stop going back in the lineage? Because even the term Boogaloo comes from Latin Boogaloo, right? From a genre of music that the Latinos brought over in the early 1960s. And well, from what I heard, even from like people like Pete, or even other people who talk about James Brown and stuff like that, where they originally heard the word boogaloo, not like boogaloo as just a dance, from Latin boogaloo, which is like
Well,
has traces in the '60s, way before.
Yeah, but even back then, like when I talked to my OGs, when they used the word boogaloo, a lot of the times it was slang. Like when like how we like when you're getting down, like we're like, oh shit, you're fucking getting down.
Yeah,
Like back then they were like, oh, you're boogalooing. You know what I
mhm.
mean? Like they just that was just slang back then. So
yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was it,
we could
what
talk
happened?
about Boogaloo's origin. I mean, there's a
yeah.
lot there
That's what
too.
you're. That's what we're here for, brother.
Okay, so Boogaloo was a term in the African American community long before Latin Boogaloo was a thing.
Hmm.
Um, and it was always associated with kind of this free spirited energy, which would be like getting down, like and the theory is that boogie and boogaloo are basically the same terms.
Hmm.
The word boogie's older, but like because they've been used the same way and meant the same thing. Um, so like we have, the oldest documentation of boogaloo as a word being used is in 1939 in Time magazine, and it was referred to an African American man, and that was his name. And the lady called him a happy-go-lucky Negro. So like it already has this like kind of energy, this happy-go-lucky, right? That kind of fits with what boogie and boogaloo mean. And then it was associated with different musicians a couple years, in the 40s and 50s. And then what happened with Latin boogaloo, if you are to, listen to the original guys that came up with that music genre, Ricardo Rey and Bobby Cruz,
Yeah.
they what happened was they saw they were playing, I guess more traditional Latin music in New York area, Harlem or somewhere around there. I forget which part of New York, but they saw these African American kids dancing a certain way to
Yeah.
their music, and they were like, "Oh, what are you guys doing?"
Well,
And they
kids
said,
that kids that they assumed are African American, right? Because they could be from the Dominican
"Sure."
Republic, they could be from Puerto Rico, they could be from Jamaica.
He called them in the movie We Like It Like That. He called them Soul Brothers.
Yeah.
And in his second album he says he explains that boogaloo came from what they call at the time the American Negro.
Hmm.
So even he's saying that this was a thing in the African American community
Hmm.
before we made this music. It actually inspired him to mix the Latin music with more of the funky soulful notes. That
Hmm.
was the soul music that was of the time, and that's what created the Latin boogaloo music. And then Latin boogaloo dance came with that right after, right? So that's something I want to like make a distinction of, because it's been this thing, like a lot of textbooks or like the Wikipedia or whatever's online sources you have, they always say boogaloo started with Latin boogaloo,
Hmm.
but it's actually a much older thing. It's just harder to find that
See,
information.
and that's why I say, like, when why do we stop with in terms of who invented Boogaloo, right? How come the person in 1932 who wrote that article doesn't get credit? If
Right.
if if,
So
if we do things like, oh well, these Latino artists, or or hey, James Brown got inspiration from this, and then it goes to like, oh well, the Oakland Boogaloo saw
mhm,
this. Like, so why do we stop? Why do we stop? Because if it's still
yeah.
describing that same energy that that person saw in the 1930s.
Yeah, it gets difficult, like, but when you want to talk about our dance, usually this is where the conversation goes, is like, you know, where did our dance start and what defines our dance, kind of thing. You have to draw some lines. It's like you can always say there's no new move under the sun, right? That's like a saying, because I'm sure thousands of years ago they were doing arm waves in
Yeah.
different, whatever, so but there is a specific way we do them in this dance, right?
Yeah.
And there's a specific combination of movements we do in this dance that's unique, right? So you can take one move and argue about it all day, but we all know that this dance is a combination of a few things, like stopping, might have a hit, might not, illusions, some kind of like animated movements, maybe some waves, the robot. You know, there's all these combination of things that make this dance unique. And so that's what I think we kind of need to focus on when we're trying to figure out like an origin of something.
Yeah.
Is to be it, you know, it's nuanced, it has complexity. It's not just like an easy answer all the time.
No, for sure. Yeah, that's one thing everyone needs to understand out there too. Is like, yeah, it's definitely there is no easy answer. It's very complex, and you know that's why we really wanted to have this conversation right on the podcast because we understand it's complex and there's always I feel like every 5 to 10 years there's more information that comes out that's like oh wow like well here's a different you know way or here's someone else that we could trace it back to and stuff like that. So yeah, just yeah, because that's what because even when I in my research of looking for the word boogaloo, I seen that it went before the 1960s and with Latin boogaloo and stuff like that. So I was just always curious to why do we why do we stop at a certain point? You know, because even in terms of like the Oakland Boogaloos, I've heard interviews from them, and they all say almost every single one says they saw somebody do something,
Mm-hmm.
regardless if it's like the same thing, and they add their own flavor to it. Like
Mm-hmm.
um, they're like, oh, I saw like Joe something, you know, hit this one walk, and then I saw it, and then I started doing it, and then like this other, you know, generation saw me do it, and then like, but like I said, like why does it stop at them? You know, if they also saw even people do certain movements that they were replicating, like that's just like
Yeah.
what I felt was always going to create the controversies, like because you could always keep digging and digging, but who and how do we give credit? Like how do we
Yeah.
determine that? Like
Yeah.
in your opinion?
I think you have to be specific about what kind of credit, you know, it's like it did they create the move? Did they create a version of the move? Did they do a combination of moves that was never done before? You know, these are kind of the things that like I said, if you just talk about a movement,
Hmm.
you're gonna you're gonna argue about that forever. It's gonna go back years and years and years and years and years.
Yeah.
But you know, this dance is a couple of things. Is a combination of movements done to a specific music, right? So funk was the thing, right? That made you dance a certain way. You did the wave a certain way. It wasn't just like, you know, a Polynesian dancer does a wave or something, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the whole culture behind it, right? So it's like it wasn't just that they were dancing for like doing whatever movement just because, like it was because they had seen it at the parties that they were going to in their communities. And because people were saying, do that boogaloo, man, you know, like they were given that energy, that was all passed down from their elders, you know. So like the whole way they dressed, everything had an influence on what this dance was. And I think a lot of times we get into these arguments because we focus on one move and we don't talk about all the other stuff
Yeah.
that went with it.
Word.
So do you so instead of us focusing on that one style, that one move, we should focus on the whole thing.
I mean,
Is that
I
what?
think I would say there's you can do either or, but like it kind of depends what your end goal is, like, you know what I'm saying, like
I mean, everybody in this dance in this dance community's end goal is to really credit the person that actually created the dance, you know. So
mhm,
that's pretty much the end goal for everybody. For me, I just want to know where did it come from, you know?
Yeah.
mhm.
Word.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but you have to define like what that dance is, right? Like that's what I'm saying is if you just talk about the backslide and who created that, you
Yeah.
know, you can go back to tap dancers and
Oh,
all
for
this stuff,
sure.
right?
Hmm.
Probably even farther back than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guarantee there's some other other people that were doing it.
Yeah.
But um but the way they did, you know, the funky way that like maybe Michael Jackson ended up doing it, you know, that came from specific people,
Yeah.
you know, and like it wouldn't have been done that way. But he wasn't just doing that either. He was doing the backslide and then he stopped, boom, bam, and hit like a pose, started rolling his shoulders, you know. there's a combination of things. So if you're talking about like the creation of Boogaloo, which was all these things together, you know, some stopping, some rolling, isolations, some animated movements, like that's where we can start talking about, okay, who is all putting that together to funk
Yeah.
music?
Yeah. See, so like what I get from that too, though, is like a lot of it has to do with if people are doing it your way, right? Let's say like if people are like, because everyone takes claim and to creating certain things, and um, they'll change the name, like we kind of said earlier, according to if they add their own flavor to a move or something. But like what I just heard you say right now is like, you know, these specific movements done this way to music, right? So like for myself, especially being on the outside, like I was never taught by electric boogaloos. I was never taught by people from the Bay. So I was always very confused with this like little, you know, the credit of names and stuff. But what I do know for a fact is when I watch electric boogaloo style of popping or boogaloo, and I watch Oakland Boogaloo style of boogalooing, I see the world doing the electric boogaloo style of boogaloo, right? And then we even go back to people, the word boogaloo, like James Brown had, you know, his history with the word. Latin Boogaloo has their history with the word. And then as you informed us with even back in the 1930s, people using the word, you could even say that the Oakland Boogaloos redefined the word, right? Would you say that? Because they took a
Oh,
word that already existed and then just claimed it and claimed it, said this is what our dance is, right? Because they didn't invent the word.
right.
So
Yeah,
like,
they took it and applied it to their dance.
mhm,
And but that one is the one that carried on through to popping, right? Because like we know popping is, no matter who you want to believe,
mhm,
popping, like even Sam says, it was Boogaloo was the umbrella
mhm,
and popping was underneath it, right?
Mhm.
It wasn't like, you know, so even he says that, you know, there was all this other things to the dance. They
yeah,
weren't just hitting their poses and popping their muscles, like, so. And every time you see a dancer back in the day, not too many of them just do that.
yeah,
You know, they're always going to throw in a wave or something, like always different things, the leg movements, the twistos, whatever it is. So this dance has always been this kind of like combination of things.
yeah,
um these are just semantics, the words that kind of came.
yeah. That's definitely semantics. That's like I think what it comes down to. But in your opinion, what would like what exactly is the controversy then? Like if it's that like, you know, like what you just explained, like what is the why is it that people from the Bay, not from Fresno area, right? Because as people in California know, Fresno is quite a distance down from like Oakland. Um, how come, like for myself, I didn't start hearing about the Oakland Boogaloos until like even like people like you really started bringing out a lot more information and stuff like that. But like,
Hmm.
why wasn't people from San Francisco and Oakland, um, uh, like, why weren't they preaching that history in terms of like, even like, let's say even because like the whole, yeah, even back to the question, like, what is the controversy between Oakland Boogaloo and Electric Boogaloo? Like, if it is just as simple as like, you know, these people adding their own flavor, their own sequence of
Well,
movements.
I want to say that a lot of the Bay Area OGs are kind of mad that Sam said he created popping.
Okay.
You know, same thing with a lot of LA OGs. They're pretty mad that Sam says that he created popping.
Yeah.
My thing is like what you just said. Maybe Sam saw something at those West Coast rallies that they used to go to, all of them. He got inspired by something and started doing his own thing. Not alone, mind you. He added the electronic boogaloo locker people that, you know, that original crew that was always there. They created something that the world does now. You know what I mean? But for me, I see history going even further.
Hmm.
You know,
No, that's real.
it's just for me the name changed because I talked to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bryce.
Hmm.
but I talked to a couple of Bay Area OGs because you know, like I'm pretty close to Pop Tart, and I used to talk to a lot never really talked to Faisal, but yeah. You know, some of the huh?
Maybe Harry or like someone associated with Pop Tart?
Yeah, Harry Berry. I definitely talked to Harry Berry, Pop Tart. And you know, like they've even back then when they used to come over here and teach us like Machine Gun Funk, and we used to go over there, they used to tell us, or Pop Tart used to say like, oh yeah, we never called it popping. If anything, they called it sticking, posing, stopping, strutting, you know, but they never called it popping. And they said it themselves, they're like, that popping, that's that jerky stuff. That's the stuff that the Boogaloos do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what they told me.
Yeah. So the thing you got to understand too is like, because I get confused when I've heard a lot of different OGs from the Bay, but then I started realizing why they're saying the certain things that contradict. So like Pop Tart and Harry Berry's experience is very specific to what, like where they went, what years they were dancing and all that stuff, right? So to them, they might not have used that word, but like in the late 77 in San Jose, they were using the word poppin'.
Yeah.
Right? So like why is Pop Tart saying that it's only the Electric Boogaloo were using that word or whatever? Because he didn't talk to those guys maybe, right? He might have went down there later when it was all big already and whatever. So like but you have to like figure out those details, right? and understand that the Bay Area, there was so many dancers here that like, and so many different cities and stuff that like they just have totally different perspectives depending on who you talk to. For some of them, it's Boogaloo and Boogaloo only. For some of them, it's strutting and strutting only. For some of them, it's popping and strutting and everything together, you know. Mm-hmm. So that helps like clarify some things. So it's, you know, I'm not telling Pop-Tart's perspective is true. It's his truth, right? But there's other people that were around as well. He was just the one that kept it going and at a high level, right? So like he's kind of more relevant today in that sense, or he's like more accessible. But there's a ton of guys that stopped dancing when they were 18 that can tell you some stuff, you know?
Yeah, but I see this, and that's going, that to me that goes back to where you say, who do you believe, right? Because I got a bunch of homeless people that could tell me a bunch of shit that I'm gonna be like, yeah, are you telling me the truth or not? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and the thing with me is like, I believe what I see. I believe, you know, like I believe in my eyes. So when I talk to Pop Tart and when I talk to Harry Berry, or even when I listen to stories from Kearney, like, cause I watch a lot of his videos, and you know, I try to study him too. Mm-hmm. You can see the history behind just even the little movement that he does. You know what I mean? Some of the OGs that and with all due respect, I'm not dissing anybody. I'm just, you know, speaking my opinion. Yeah. You know, they talk about like, oh yeah, we did this back in the days. I don't see it. I just don't see it. You know what I mean? Like they could just be some old people telling me fairy tales. I don't know. Like, I don't know where to draw the line on who to believe and who not to believe. You know what I mean? Like,
I get what you're saying too. Just to give some context to that too, is like, now that I'm getting older, I see that there is a lot of people when I first started, even though I was like very young and they were older than me, who now 10, 15 years later are saying things that like I was there for, and I hear them, you know, recanting the situation or the event, and I'm like, oh yeah, like that didn't happen that way. Like,
yeah, it's not how it happened.
Time, you know, with time, I feel like always with time, history changes, and a lot. And I'm not saying specifically with this, but I think that's kind of like
no. But even with my OGs, their story changed a lot. Yeah. The first they started in 1 year, the next year they went back, the next year they went forward. I'm like, yo, like get it together, guys. Come on, like you're confusing everybody. You know what I mean? No, so to me, it's like I just like I believe in my eyes, and if I see the history behind what you're talking about, then I'm gonna believe it, you know.
Okay.
So,
Interesting.
you know, like when I talk to Pop Tart and when I talk to Harry Berry and a couple of the other ones that are like not as old as Kearney, but they're still OGs from the Bay, I believe them. I believe what they say, you know. So I do want to. I hope these other guys from, like you said, the dudes from San Jose that were calling it popping. I want to hear more from them. I want to hear like when did they hear the word popping? What year? Like how did that come about? You know,
Yeah,
like
totally.
that would be incredible.
Definitely.
Yeah, this is you guys' concern, like what you're saying is totally valid, and I think I went through this process as well. Like I was a lot more skeptical of things in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and then for me, it took talking to a lot of people to really start to understand what was happening, and then I learned how to talk to them and how to ask them questions and be like, you know, so if they say something, as they say a year, for example, um, I'll go, well, you know, that doesn't match up with this other person said it was more like this time frame. So I was like, okay, how old were you? What grade were you in? You know, did you skip a grade in school? You know, what song were you dancing to? And these things help me like barrel down to a specific year,
Mm-hmm.
and then they might be completely off, or they might be pretty damn close. And like, and if 10 guys are saying about the same time period, then I tend to believe that. Or even if it's 3, you know, that's
Yeah,
decent. It's like an
yeah.
investigation, you know.
But
But
what do you
it's hard
believe
because
more?
there wasn't a lot of documentation at the time.
Do you believe
Yeah.
words more, or do you believe like what Kid Boogie's saying, like
Oh,
saying like what? Okay, what's to stop a 68-year-old man from coming up to you as Bryce with like 10 of his family members and saying like, well, you know, here's all the people that could tell you, I would do the headspin pop back in my day. You know, I
yeah,
don't know if you ever heard of the headspin pop, but I was popping upside down. Look, here's the
yeah.
people. But then when you're like, all right, can you show me something? And then it's like, obviously, you know, that's an extreme example because a 68-year-old ain't gonna go on their head. But I'm saying like in terms of okay, they
Hmm.
when you see it, you're like, well, that like you don't were you just participating or were you actually someone who invented and you know had followers and created a movement? Because there's a lot of people who, especially back in the day, were just participating that now
Hmm.
are like, I created this, I created that. But like just like me giving the example of people now in our generation that I know were just participating who are way older now who are like, yeah, you know, I was doing this and I was doing that, and I'm like, you know, I was there for your first class, you
No,
know,
you weren't.
you know what I'm saying? So like for yourself, like I know you just kind of gave that example of how you eliminate, you know, the BS from the truth and stuff. But
Hmm.
what validates what is like the ultimate stamp of validation for you where you're like, okay, I believe this person. I'm gonna like run with this.
um, Usually it's like if there's multiple people that where their stories kind of line up with certain facts,
Mm,
and other people that were witnesses to them that didn't actually really know them that well too,
yeah.
or like, you know, they're like, yeah, like you said, if it's their family members saying whatever, sure, then I think about that. I don't just like believe them, you know. but
Yeah.
but then when I hear like, oh, this guy from this part of Oakland that they don't really even know each other, but they both say that, yeah, they saw this movement around 75 or whatever, like that's that's interesting, you know, like
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
a little more credibility to it. But as far as seeing them dance, that one can be difficult because especially here, a lot of these guys, when they got out of high school, they had to basically start making money one way or the other, and dance was not really that. There was no opportunities like that here, so very few of them actually kept up with it. And I'm talking about guys that multiple people verify was like one of the coldest dudes back in the day,
Yeah.
can't even like bust a move at all, or like doesn't remember, like he'll be like, I don't even remember doing that, but then I have 5 other guys that were like, oh no, he was really good at
Yeah.
that. You know what I'm saying? So like that's why it takes like talking to a lot of them. It's takes more time and energy and is, you know, difficult, but it really brings a lot of clarity.
for sure.
Um,
No, and that's the thing too. I don't want to come off like I was being brutal. Like I'm a like tell a 70-year-old like, bro, you better get off right now. I just mean in general, like because us who like we my whole life I've always been I'm a curious person. Kid Boogie's very similar in that sense. So like I've always asked questions. I'm always into things like just listening to the elders and stuff. And throughout the years, I've had to really understand that like even though these people are dancers and all this, like not everyone is honest. Not everyone
no,
everyone has their own agenda. You know what I'm saying?
they do.
So, um, like, and I've seen it. I've seen it happen. I've seen it so many times where I'm like, yo, around this group of people, you said a whole different story. Or even people who see something becoming popular and then they kind of like get wind of it, and then when you tend to come to them to ask them, they already have something rehearsed to tell you because they've kind of been keeping, a lot of OGs are on the internet, and that's another thing. A lot of OGs pretend that they're not keeping up with things, and I know there's a huge amount that don't, but there is these certain older people who are on the internet seeing the conversations and then
Hmm.
being able to be like, oh well, yeah, because they got wind of it early, so then they're able to kind of their rehearsed answer comes out, and it's just like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But it's like, yeah, of course, because you watched this OG's interview, then you watched this OG's interview,
I
and
mean, it's like Pop and Andre right now, right? He's on
oh,
Facebook telling people that he's the one that made popping better, and it's like a young kid from Kazakhstan don't know anything might be like, oh shit, that's Pop and Andre, that's an OG, he's telling the truth. When us in LA, we're like, nah, you're full of shit, bro. You didn't make popping better. Now, you created your own style, supposedly that's what you say, but you didn't make it better. You know what I mean? You just added to it.
yeah, it was
Well,
And
that's
it's like,
of other people.
and that's another thing we talk about, like better, who was better and the best.
Yeah,
That's gonna be some people are gonna debate about all the
yeah,
time.
exactly.
It always happens where like with Andre, right? Is a good example because he went on there talking about being the first to like vibrate and something else, right? And which is, like maybe in his world he was like whatever. So,
you're
but
a nice
anyways,
guy, Bryce. You're a
but
nice
look,
guy.
but look,
No, it wasn't, bro. He
Go
wasn't the
ahead,
first one to vibrate. Come
hey,
on.
go ahead,
Just
Bryce.
gotta
what
keep
I
it 100 here, bro. Just keep it
but I wanted
100.
I know he wasn't because Kearney's doing it in 77 on the Gong Show.
Yeah,
And that's
Yeah.
what we pointed out to him, right? So we're like, but if we didn't have that footage, we
mhm,
couldn't have really, it would be like, oh, we don't know. We don't really know he did that and blah, 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 right?
yeah,
So, thank God we had that. But like, we addressed it with him, and I wanted to clarify. I'm like, maybe maybe you didn't see Kearney, maybe blah blah blah, or maybe that year you said that you saw the EBs in 70. What did he say? 77, and then he wanted to pop. Actually, I was like, but they didn't come down till 78. This is like they tell this story all the time. They came down in 78 to us. And so he was like, oh, you're correct, blah, blah, blah. So having that conversation and like, having those other testimonies to like bring in, like I said, it's like an investigation. It's like
yeah. But see, you have to have that type of knowledge because that's back to my point. Is like, and I'm not saying Andre did this exactly with this intention, but there's a lot of people who you say, oh well, the first person that boom 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 is 70. Let's say I'll even put another like 92 was the first person I seen do this, and then someone's like, well, 91 because they just saw you say 92. Like, how many like times do you think are like that's the thing I want I guess the people out there to understand is that like um especially if you're from that era, like a lot of people want credit, and I understand, but it's like you have to be able to do research and really like yeah, do research and be able to decipher who's telling the truth and who's not, because it's very simple for someone to see a conversation happening and then just to one up you say like, yeah, I'm just say the year before, whatever year you're claiming, I'm just gonna say the year before, um,
hmm
and but
It's like what Bryce just said, right?
Mhm.
He said he saw the footage of Kearney
Yes.
and Gang Show. Like that was the proof. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying too. Like what I see is what I believe. You know,
Yeah.
I could hear a million stories from all these motherfuckers, bro. And you know, like most of our OGs are full of like
Well, it's
years of abuse, bro. Just years of abuse. You know.
yeah, yeah.
And like, are we gonna? You know, like who am I gonna really believe? You know what I mean?
I get what you're
Yeah,
saying.
it takes that effort. You know, it's like it's not easy. Definitely question them. Definitely don't
Yeah.
believe everything you hear.
Don't be
But at the
rude,
same
though.
time, you know, understand that there's these guys that they like, especially in the Bay Area, they did not have, because of the conditions they were in, they weren't walking around with video cameras.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
like the Gong Show was in LA, right?
Hmm.
That was like a rare thing that they actually got to go down there and perform and have it filmed, you know. But they were doing tons of stuff up here that wasn't filmed.
Yep.
And some of the stuff up here that was filmed, the show was so low budget that every week they had to refilm over the same film reel.
Yeah.
So we don't even have that footage,
Yeah.
you know, like that Jay Payton show of the
Yeah,
resurgence that's out there.
but
That shit was in a basement, like hiding,
but
like
I'm sure there's like newspaper cuttings, flyers that you know, like they could show us dates that could be like, yeah, this is where we performed. This, look at the date. You know, this is what the outfits that we were wearing back then. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
there wasn't any video because I actually got this from the Mysterious Poppers because, you know, unfortunately, there's no real videos of them getting down. You know what I mean? But they did show me a bunch of pictures and you know, they showed us a bunch of pictures and like, yeah, this is when we did this in Long Beach, this and that. You know what I mean? So there has to be flyers and you know.
yeah, the evidence,
Yeah.
evidence.
But see, then this
Yeah.
brings me to, okay, now like this might be, I don't know, okay, it's kind of on topic, but I feel like now what we're talking about, this is why the newer generation is the way they are, because it's like if there's no proof of you getting credit or no proof of you doing something, then your history is gonna be erased. So like how do we resolve that? Because then us older generations, we kind of complain about the way you know that major difference of like people want instant gratification, people want credit right away, you know, and then here we're talking about it's like, yo, if you don't have proof, then like you're gonna be discredited. Because then what's to stop someone from saying that they're the main reason why Kearney Myers danced? You know, they're like, well, I don't have nothing, like I don't have nothing, but are they lying? You know, because they don't have anything. Does that necessarily make someone a liar because they don't have something? But
Hmm.
I definitely understand as well. Like, you know, when someone does have evidence, then how can you discredit that at all, right? When
Yeah.
you do have
Exactly.
evidence. So yeah, I don't know if this was a question or just me kind of thinking out loud, but like I don't know because you know it's just
Well,
like fuck. Imagine.
here's my 2 cents for the people that are listening, right? Whoever you want to learn from, whatever OG you want to go and you know, learn knowledge, get history from, ask questions. You know what I mean? Don't just sit there and believe every little thing that they say because I through experience, a lot of these OGs intend to lie. It might not be the biggest lie, but sometimes they lie. You know what I mean? Look at their intentions too. Like, look, just you know, be mindful of what like. Just ask questions. Be a good student. You know, if you're a student of this culture, if you're a student of this dance, you're gonna ask questions. You're not just gonna sit there and let somebody tell you a bunch of, you know, a bunch of shit and not ask anything.
No, for sure.
So you know, that's my thing.
And for sure,
Yeah.
and be understanding too, and like don't be combative when you come to these people and like question them like they're liars, but like ask questions in a way that they're gonna feel comfortable enough to answer you because um,
Yeah.
like kind of like what Bryce was saying earlier, it's not like they were all kids doing this. They weren't doing it trying to preserve the culture and history and like with the intentions of like,
Yeah.
oh, let me write down this like right now, you know, May 9th, 73, I did the first like wave,
Yeah.
this is gonna be important in 2020, so I understand, because there's things people ask me from 5 years ago, and I'm like, and and they have it's on YouTube or something, and I can't remember, and like I can't imagine being like 55 and going through, a crazy lifestyle, and then someone being like, "Do you remember when you were 14? Like, did you really see like,
Mhm.
did you see
I
Robert
don't
Smith?"
remember what I did in high school, bro.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
know.
but
I know that's what I'm saying. Like having that understanding of where they're coming from, and I think the biggest thing is when they say they created something, that's where it gets like that's the thing that's always questionable, you know. But if they were part of something, like if they were one of the pioneers, they did it a certain way that was different, and you have multiple people, backing them up in some way. There you go. That's
There you go. Yeah.
that's real, man.
it's
And for me, leave the OGs to fight with each other, and like us just
Yeah, bro.
listen and
This is one thing that I never understood, right? Is I understand some people are angry at the fact that the Boogaloo said that they created popping. I understand that, especially if they have their own history, with the dance or whatever. But I kind of feel like a lot of these people that are out here hating and putting all this energy, right? All this energy into bringing the Boogaloos down. They should be putting that energy,
yeah,
instead of bringing people down, bring people up. Be
yeah,
like, okay, that's what they do. Okay, that they taught you that. This is what we do. Let me teach you guys. Let me teach these students this, and they could get up. And now they have competition with the other guys. You know what I mean? A lot of these OGs, all they do is bring other people down. Like,
even
and
within
and
their
it
own crew
sucks.
sometimes. That's something
Yeah,
that I feel like is so hard for the newer generation to like. And the reason really like, if we want to see this evolve and grow to where like people who pop could really make a living off of this, and like really this could be taught in universities and things like that, like um we're gonna need some type of like coalition, right? We're gonna need people to like be able to agree on things. But like what always throws me off is like when I see crew members of old crews hate on each other. And then I'm like,
yeah,
fuck, well what do I do now when this crew member is like, man, they weren't even the best one in the crew, and then it starts like this like weird conversation, and then you're like, um, wait, like, whoa, like what's going on? And then you just kind of, I think what it does is it turns you off in a sense, right? Like especially those who are not interested in the drama, right? And we like really
yeah.
want to like know the truth, per se. But yeah, like, or any dance drama that's that serious, especially within popping. But yeah, man, it just there's so much history. I know Bryce. What projects do you have going on right now? Because I think, were you doing something with the Oakland Boogaloos? Like I know you had an interview or two on your YouTube channel. Are you?
Yeah, I'm always researching more and interviewing more people and stuff. So just putting a lot of that stuff like together, documenting it while they're here,
Yeah,
because they're getting older every day. And so basically just trying to gather as much information as I can right now, talking to different people. I did an interview with William Bilal, who was from West Oakland, for All the Way Live's having a little festival next month, and so there'll be like a little short thing on that with him.
super dope.
But yeah, always researching, man.
Dope. Like
Trying to
what
find all these guys.
Yeah, that right there is a mission, man. Like especially recently, I've been doing that, really like going around finding OGs to interview, and like I know Kid Boogie has as well. And like, man, what y'all don't know, to like get them to talk, or just to find them, or to get them to commit to a time to talk, is like it could take weeks, months. Just to get, much love, Bryce, for you like doing that. Trying your best to get what you feel is the truth out there and stuff like that. And is there anything, like any knowledge or any advice that you have for the newer generation, or just anyone that wants to get involved with our culture, like in general?
I think what we talked about a lot already is like just understanding perspectives, understanding where these guys are coming from, and that their backgrounds, their age, when they stop dancing, what areas they're from. All these things shape what they say, what their story is to you. And so just think about that, take in what they're saying, take the good stuff that you want from it. But always just know that like, yeah, maybe they're mad about something and they won't let it go. That's just how they are. And they might have been brought up in a way with a rough background that like makes them not, it's hard for them to like take that in a mature way and deal with it or whatever, right? So just being understanding in that way, and just like, it's like respect your elders regardless, right? Like you might have a grandpa that's like an asshole, but like you got to respect him, right? He's your grandpa. So like it's kind of the same thing with these guys. But don't let them walk all over you. You gotta be your own person at the same time. But and also the other big thing is like understanding that there's a culture behind this. You can't just understand it and talk about the movements and who created that and this and that. Like there's a whole, what this came out of, was a
rights movement.
Yeah, expression in the face of oppression. Basically a lot of these communities were struggling. The African American community has a long history of doing these dances. It's coming from Africa through the slave trade up to like New York, where they were creating jazz and jazz dance, and all this stuff has its relevance to what Boogaloo is today. And then all the other cultures that then added to it after, so this stuff is just really important to really get an understanding of like what this is all about.
Yeah, no, that's real, man. And that's something like, I know we could talk probably for another couple hours on like what it actually came out of, right? Like the Black Panther movement, Brown Berets, the Yellow Pearl, all that type of stuff. And maybe that's for another episode where we could like dig even deeper into like that. But also yeah, but just appreciate all that knowledge, Kid Boogie. Any advice for anyone out there listening?
Yeah, I'll for all my my Bay Area people around the world, my Bay Area dancers, respect, you know what I mean, and also the Electric Boogaloo students too. Respect each other, because this is not your fight. You know what I mean? Like here's one thing that I want people to understand, right? Whether you agree with them, whether you believe them or not, if it wasn't for the Boogaloos taking what they do around the world, most of these countries wouldn't be dancing.
Oh, Electric Boogaloo.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they actually kept popping alive and took it to Japan, took it to Europe, took it to all these other countries. Because of them, you guys started popping. I'm pretty sure a lot of the Bay Area style dancers now started with Electric Boogaloo style. And now, now they found themselves with another style, which is totally incredible. It's dope. But don't forget that if it wasn't for them, you guys wouldn't probably be dancing, So just respect, show, like Bryce said, respect your elders, let them fight that fight, enjoy the dance. Don't get into the politics.
Yeah, that's for sure. Like, don't get into the politics. Regardless of who inspired you first, like appreciate everyone's story, everyone's history.
Yeah.
Everyone does have a history, regardless if they were really dope or not. And yeah, man, just shout out to all the pioneers, all the people who've helped, create this and push this forward. Let's try to keep positives, let's try to keep learning. And yeah, man, thank you everyone out there. This is Outspoken.
Let's get it.